last week, we're talking about, one of the things that a lot of real estate markets are struggling with right now is we have low inventory, and we're dealing with some inflation.
Yep.
So not only with inflation, but we also have supply chain issues, which is causing what? Building products to be more and more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So timelines are getting stretched on with new construction. So one of the things that some folks are turning to, including Habitat for Humanity.
Yes.
A couple weeks ago, we had them on the show. And we covered a story last week about how Iowa State is helping to rebuild a town devastated by floods through the new technology and the new process of 3D printing, 3D printing homes. So we have actually a photo and some video of what that looks like. And, of course, we were talking last week about the advantages. The advantages of building homes like this is the fact that they're going to be – this video, by the way, from Virginia Tech, a similar program I can only imagine from the one at Iowa State. So the logic behind this process is it's quicker. If you can imagine, just you got your printing machine going around and printing out the extruding, if you will, the exterior walls, as you see there in the video behind us. And then you have so if you can imagine something like this can be printed in a day.
Oh yeah.
All of a sudden you have boom. But actually, well, I don't want to get to it.
Well, I guess
too fast, but you see the printer doing its thing there. It goes really well. It's what is it? Time lapse, but
right.
You get the idea. Mm-hmm. So time. It saves money because you can imagine there's the amount of, I guess, crew that you need out there if they're printing it and they're doing those aspects of the home.
Got a lot less man hours on it.
Yeah, there you go. And other advantages include less materials with the printing of it, with the actual process. Here we are, they're adding the mix, which looks like a cement type of mix that is building the exterior structure of this house. So, time, it seemed like last week we were talking about how it seems to solve all the issues that real estate markets are dealing with these days. There's not enough inventory. Well, this helps it get out there really quickly. And then, with the time frame, getting homes built, it speeds the process up, gets homes out there quickly, and it's cheaper, according to what they're saying in comparison to a standard home. But there are some cons, I guess, that would be safe to discuss. And I have some in my head that I immediately thought of that I could see this being built with, and it's kind of what the question we handled in the last segment is. With our listener April had a cement block house, which we don't build anymore. But I mean, this is kind of the same type of structure. Mm-hmm. This is kind of an extruded cement material that's being used for the exterior walls. If you're looking to do things like maybe rehang some cabinets or you do some built-ins or things like that, that kind of creates some issues.
Right.
Especially if you're thinking about rerunning wiring or remodeling a kitchen or a bathroom that has some exterior walls. How do you run the plumbing and things in and out? I mean, in most exterior walls, we don't have plumbing. We don't want them.
Right.
But, sometimes it's what you got to do. Some other cons that I did some research on and found is there are no regulations or processes to get 3D printing buildings approved for residential or commercial use as far as codes.
Right.
There's nothing in place as far as these are the building codes.
Yeah.
So I guess
it just has to be signed off on by the engineer, pretty much, sort of like a trust or a commercial property. A lot of times you got to just turn in the plans, and it's got to be the engineer's got to take all the liability for it.
I can't imagine. You do hire the local building codes enforcement, and they come out to one of these.
Yeah.
And they're used to traditional homes.
Be like, I don't know. Where's the engineer's letter?
Yeah, that's exactly what they would do.
That's what I would ask.
So the government would first need to come up with standards that must be followed as far as electrical, plumbing, structural integrity, here it says, and public safety codes. So there are some things that are, I guess, going to have to be that come into play here. I would assume that things like fire safety might be a little bit easier. It's a cement house.
Yeah, you'd think so, but I'm imagining, this is a guess, that the rafters are still going to be wood.
Yeah,
maybe they're not. I honestly don't know.
Good point.
Do they just do the walls and then the rafters and all? Or
well, here's what it says here. It says in our next bullet point here, it says material types are limiting for 3D printed homes. So the material that can be delivered from the printer head is, as you see in this video here, is pretty limited to just concrete and plastics. So you're kind of stuck with this type of design. That's one of the disadvantages of 3D printed homes. You can't get real creative, in other words.
Right.
The buildings requiring wood or steel components can't use the printer.
Right.
You also are limited to a specific look. So that's a challenge. Now, I found this one interesting. Longevity.
Okay.
What usually happens when you're dealing with something that's cheaper, especially in the home improvement industry?
When you're dealing with something
home
cheaper,
building or home improvement, if it's cheaper, what is it usually?
It doesn't last as long.
Yeah, there's usually a give and take, right? So, and that's what they're talking about, these 3D printed homes. Hey, they're fast, they're cheap. Well, you also run into a lack of longevity, according to some reports that I looked up. 3D printed homes are expected to only last about 50 to 60 years.
Okay.
Which is, the average person.
And I guess once they start crumbling, there's no go in and replace
reprinting.
You don't want to start patching.
That's right.
Cracking drywall.
See, that's going to create a whole other probably aspect of the industry.
Right.
Repairing and replacing portions of 3D printed homes. How do you go about doing that? It's a good question. Many of the 3D printed homes here have timber elements that they say are more susceptible to decay over time if not treated or maintained properly. So that's something that also interesting to know about. So I wonder if it does create... Well, I mean, you and I know from inspecting homes and repairing homes, usually if you have rotted wood, it's right where that wood comes in contact with masonry.
Right. Yeah.
And that's why you always want treated wood there.
Right. And yeah, my assumption, because I keep thinking about this roofing or
situation. Yeah.
I mean, is that where would they print that in plastic? And then it seems like that would get more expensive than what it would be to just do the traditional.
That's a good point.
So but if it's saying that the problems with the wood, I'm sure it's where all the wood's will be sitting on top of the masonry, sucking that moisture out of it and rotting away.
It also says there's difficulty finding raw materials. So this kind of sounds like this might be supply chain issues related. Ever since people began using 3D printing technology to build homes, finding high-quality construction material has been difficult. The raw material used in traditional construction is not the same as the material used in 3D printers. And there are very few materials today that could be used in a 3D printer. So it's kind of a new thing. It's evolving. Besides, most of the printers need specific materials. This means that it might not be possible to use the raw material of one printer on another. That's a good point. So it's specific to...
you can't just bring out there and pump some concrete today, then tomorrow bring out some plastic and throw it in there.
Call Metromont.
Might have some problems.
Yeah. That's a good point. So, by the way, this article and a lot of this information, some of it here, I've mixed it from a couple different articles, but most of it is from an article I saw in U.S. News and World Report. So I want to give them credit for most of this information. The engineering compatibility is another issue. So the 3D printed home processes that come with the new technology are not being used during the design phase. 3D printed home processes are not being... Oh, I see. So very few architects and engineers are familiar with drawing plans up and all that for them.
Right.
And if there's one thing we know about engineers and architects is they're set in their ways.
Yeah. Like, I guess this would be a good niche to get into. If you're an engineer and architect.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine putting out the draw. Well, I guess technically if a lot of these houses are the exact same, which I'm going to assume they are, because by the time I don't think you're just going to go in and change the program for every house to make it different. So I guess once you draw that first drawing and have it, I'm sure that same house will be built
a bunch
many
of times.
times.
Yeah. They'll have to be creative with the finishing materials to keep it from looking like a cookie cutter neighborhood, if you will.
Right.
It says traditional blueprints are not compatible for use with a 3D printer, so the design process needs to be handled differently. So from the literally ground up or from the drawing board,
right,
things have to be different because, you know, the blueprints are different.
Mm-hmm.
And who's familiar with knowing how to do that stuff? And, of course, the last item that's on the list as far as the cons, the challenges of 3D printing for this particular set of articles is that it's experimental.
Right.
It's new.
Yeah.
So most of completed 3D printing buildings are experimental projects intended to show the capabilities of the technology, so the jury is still out. And what's one thing that we know about new stuff when it comes to home improvement?
It takes a while to figure out that it's not
how
working
we screwed
right.
it up.
Yeah. About 10 years later, and we talk about this all the time, like certain products that were around, and then 10 years later, you start seeing them warping or cracking or breaking or bending. And it's like, okay, now if you did a whole house out of concrete and 10 years later you see that it's failing, that's a pretty big investment to have to.
That like goes back, going back to our photo from the field too. If you have a house that's starting to get wet and all that calcifying is happening and all that stuff, is that an issue? Is moisture management a completely different monster, if you will, with a house like this?
Yeah.
Be interesting to find out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, I'm sure that it will, I would think that it is going to become popular in some kind of way.
It'll find its place, just like many other things.
Yeah. I don't think every house in the world is going to be made out of concrete in 10 years, but then again, I could be completely wrong.
Mm-hmm. I just, you know, one of the things that I see a lot that homeowners do as a home improvement that they look forward to doing are things like replacing windows or adding windows. I just, it makes me wonder what kind of process that would entail.
I bet a change order would be real expensive.
Yeah. And, you know, the way I saw in that video how these walls were being built, they're printing the walls, but it looked like they were doing some sort of reinforcement or rebar or something.
It looked like there's rebar between every level, pretty much.
Yeah. So, you know, if you want to add an outlet or a cable jack or something like that on an outside wall,
what do you do?
Yeah. It'd be interesting to find out how that, are these homes equipped with raceways or something like that so you can run wiring? Like I said, plumbing wouldn't be as much of an issue because typically we don't like running plumbing lines on outside walls.
Right.
For freezing and other issues like that. But
I guess the electrical would be the main thing I would think you'd have a lot of problems with. Or it would be challenging. I shouldn't say you'll have a lot of problems with. I don't know exactly how to be done.
You're challenging. We're just kind of reconfiguring things.
Because the HVAC, technically, if the walls are concrete, I'm sure the floor is concrete. So all the HVACs could be ran in the attic anyway. But the electrical on the exterior walls, I don't know how that would be done. But I mean, they've already completed some of these. I mean, I saw this week where somewhere in Virginia, Habitat Humanity had finished their first 3D printed house. So I'm sure these answers are there. I just don't know them.
Do we know of anybody who's doing it in our area yet?
I do not know of anyone.
I tell you what, I'll be interested in going to check it out when it does happen.
Just watch it, see what happens.
Sure, I'm sure that one day might come where they're like, "Hey, you familiar with this type of construction?" I'll be like, "Well, I guess I'm about to be."
I'd like to see it.
So, but yeah, interesting technology. We'll see how it works, see how it sustains itself, and just like many other products out there, we'll see what happens. I hate to say it, but that's one of those things they always tell you in broadcasting school and journalism school. Never end a story with, well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But
hopefully it goes well.
Yeah, hopefully it does. Because, there are other products. EIFS is one that comes to mind for me.
Yes.
The synthetic stucco issues that we've seen with moisture management and things. Hopefully they figured that out with these types of homes.
Right.
But we'll see. We'll see how it happens. We'll keep you updated as things develop. Special thanks to U.S. News and World Report, some of my other sources for some of this information, and we'll keep you posted as things develop on the new 3D home printing technology. Thanks for watching this highlight video from one of the episodes of the Home Pros Radio Show. Remember, you can catch full episodes of the Home Pros Radio Show right here on this channel.
And please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when new episodes are released.
I wonder if it sounds like this.